Yet though as the US seeks to beach up, or, in several feeling, maintenance, its relationships in African governments, Tillerson is strongly aware of else, greater present looming in the backdrop, China. With the previous 2000s, China has been putting hard through Africa via sharply enlarged trading, overseas straight investment and loans of the China Exportable Import Banking. The event has, in lot respects, been a blessing for African economies. But it has as well put the US by the government on end, as Tillerson pronounced in a speaking over the 1 week at George Bricklayer College, in Washington's Virginia suburban area. China Invest does include the capacity to address Africa's infrastructure facilities space, but its attitude has led to installation obligation and few, if any, jobs in largest countries, told Tillerson. While linked in policy and financial blood pressure, the endangers Africa's nature asset and its length-term economical and policy sustainability. The US by the government is truly concerned on the risks introduced by enlarged African debt. It has more extensive concerns as so, that include less than to do in a feeling of altruistic and more than to do in balancing China's increasing impact in the evolving planet. At a congressional listening the 1 week, writer and Asia analysis Gordon Chang reasoned how China's track in Africa represents a brand new shape of colonization, how seeks to distribution China impact and threatens America's own interests. One day it locks in countries and makes them dependent, told Chang. Beijing gets their supporting for geopolitical goals, and one of these goals is blasting democratic state. Not all who teaching the area shares the absolute type, but the opaque in that China leaders' work has taken into account growth to skepticism on the nation's length-term goals in Africa. One Waste, One Way. In 2013, China CEO Xi Jinping started up China's One Waste, One Way policy, that centers on pump hundreds of billions of dollars in ports, railing channel and some projects through Asia, Europe and Africa. The expenses of the program are astronomical, but China hopes it will induce consumer demand for China consumer goods across the sea and extend China's impact in world sphere. Critics, yet, support the program has saddled evolving countries in deformation debts and enlarged their dependency on China. In a latter research, the Center for World Growth identified 8 countries as especially sensitive to obligation by One Waste, One Way, consisting Djibouti, a nation in the Bugle of Africa. How Tillerson attended Friday, and wherever China is house it's at first constant across the sea war basis. The paper notes how Djibouti's social foreign obligation in the recent 2 years has enlarged of 50 to 85% of its total national food, onto latter information of the World Cash Foundation, and lot of how comes of China. Address such obligation concerns at a news story meeting near Tillerson, the nation's overseas secretary, Mohammed Ali Yusuf, told Djibouti's obligation to China is so far obedient. Allow me at first emphasize the reality how no nation can evolve himself out of possessing a powerful infrastructure facilities, told Yusuf, or China is, of how prospect, a really nice affiliate. In spite the leverage the obligation could potential offer China, Scott Morris, one of the authors of the Center for World Growth paper, alerted U.S. lawmakers how Washington is necessary to be careful in its critique of China credit. Since lot African countries include skilled economical increase as a outcome of China investment, he told, terrible warnings of the joint state are hardly to discover a susceptible auditorium in the evolving planet. Instead of, told Morris, we should be particular in our critique of China credit practices and see for particular opportunities to attract the China on reformation. A elder country division formal who informed reporters front of Tillerson's travel told the agent plans to include a cardiac-to-cardiac debate in China leaders on Africa, to address several of the concerns on cheap interest loans and source exhaustion. The formal as well grown such concerns on Russia's and Iran's latter projects on the mainland. Can the U.S. competitive? Deborah Brodegum, CEO of the China-Africa Study Lead at Johns Hopkins High School of Progressive World Teaching, says Africa's obligation is an increasing issue and decent of Tillerson's focus. Yet, she suggests the authority hasn't proposed a new attitude in the area. I was frustrated, she told of the Secretariat's latter speaking, we aware a lot more than now rather than while, ex-Secretariat of Country Hillary Clinton attended in 2011 and 2012, but I don't see lot advance in regulation of Secretariat Tillerson. He sounds really lot love Secretariat Clinton, she extended, or same's manufacturing several of the identical main errors in regulation of analyzing which China is making in Africa. Particularly, Brodegum points to Tillerson's declaration on China invest creation few if any jobs in largest countries. How's a adhesive mythology, she says, how doesn't exactly represent the position in lot countries. However, he's a spot Tillerson reiterated Thursday at a news story meeting in the president of the African Association. China loans do not give considerable job create local, he told, they don't give considerable learning programmed how allow African countrymen to take part more than completely in the next, and often the funding model are structural in a way how the nation, while it gets in anxiety financially, loses monitoring of its own infrastructure facilities or its own asset via failure. We are not in any way trying to hold China invest dollar out of Africa, Tillerson told. They are ill necessary. Yet, we believe he's essential how African countries thoroughly believe the regulation of such investment, and we eyewitness the pattern how the China pursue. African Association President Moussa Faki rejected how China has a monopolist on industry in Africa. Addition, I believe the Africans are ripe quite to attract in partnerships of their own freedom that will be helpful for the nation, for the countries and the mainland. The formal emphasized how U.S. companies can promote in-house seen as so, as the country division is acute to allocate. But us business community are disadvantaged in one essential honor. China companies, historic, include been capable to get off in behavior how is prohibited by U.S. against corruption laws, enabling them to capitalize on wild scam in several African countries. He's in question Tillerson should be known in with he was a elder execution at the oil gigantic ExxonMobil while on in some U.S. oil companies, became entwined in a stock and exchanging committee inquiry in 2004 associated to payments they done to officials in petroleum-rich Equatorial Guinea. ExxonMobil rejected any offense and the SEC eventually did not conduct legislative activity versus the business. Implications on politics and safety U.S. concerns extend for trading and economical competitive. As Chong alluded to in his evidence, down there is more extensive concern amongst several China watchers how the nation could use its leverage above African governments to save politics commitments, potential at the charge of U.S. values. Down there are safety implications as so. Over the year, the France paper Le Monde informed how the African Association staff, constructed by the China, had been hacked. Quoting African Association source, Le Monde explainable how information was creature siphoned of the house's IT scope each overnight in the direction servers in Shanghai, and a next broom of the house rotated up lie microphones in desks and walls. A representative for China's overseas ministry told the paper was relying on unfounded accusations, and a representative for the African Association given a such negation. On Thursday, Tillerson met in the African Association president in the identical staff house in Ethiopia. But in Djibouti, Tillerson will be confronted in a greater Shah of China might, the website of the nation's new war basis, close the U.S. bases camping Le Monnier. In its domestic defense policy opened in January, the Pentagon identified China, in Russia, as same center problem cladding the U.S. war, and told length-term strategy competitions in China and Russia are the main priorities for the division. China has advanced its war bonds through Africa in latter year. Onto a paper by the Europe Justice on Overseas Relations, collaboration in Africa on world and safety is now an obvious portion of Beijing's overseas politics. In 2015, XI devoted 8,000 military to the UN maintenance of peace backup strength, a fifth of the 40,000 full military devoted by 50 nations. China as well incorporated $100 millionth to the African Association backup strength and $1 trillion to set the UN World and Growth Confidence Foundation. The chief of U.S. Africa team, General Thomas Waldhauser, said lawmakers the 1 week the U.S. is not innocent on the implications of possessing a China basis close camping Le Monnier, consisting the opportunity China might use its leverage above Djibouti's by the government to limit U.S. accessing to a strategy seaport in the nation, but as well seize avenues for collaboration in the China in Djibouti.